Hey, in this video, I'm going to show you how we can create automated TikTok slideshows like this account in the personal finance niche with 32,000 followers. And look at this slideshow. It's got 540,000 views. And then here's another account that's actually run by the software company Claude. So they're spinning up these TikTok slideshow accounts. You can see this one got 63,000 views. And so what's happening here is this is just a bunch of still images. We've got a hook that's a text overlay on the first image. And then it's about 5 to 7 slides in each slideshow with different types of tips or pieces of advice. And they can perform really well. So going back to this personal finance account, we've got almost 3 million views. These two have 500,000 views. This one has 1.3 million. This one has 280,000 views. And you can see with this account how simple it is, right? So the hook is mistakes I made while saving my first 100K. And then if you go through the slideshow, again, it's just a list of different tips and ideas. And so in this video, I want to show you how we can automate this entire process with n8n and Airtable. So we can create a system that's generating these TikTok slideshows on autopilot every single day and publishing them to TikTok. So if you go to my dummy account, which I've actually been testing with an AI avatar, but I'm also publishing the slideshows here, you can see I'm trying to replicate that finance account. And so this one was fully automated with n8n, Airtable, and Nano Banana. And so again, this is a really good strategy if you're trying to grow a TikTok page. Maybe you're promoting a software or an e-commerce brand, and being able to automate this allows you to really scale the content production for a page like this. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the Airtable setup as well as the n8n setup. But if you want to fast track your learning and your implementation, make sure to check out my premium community, Scale AI. So this is an AI and automation training community for TikTok brands, DTC brands, creative agencies, ad agencies, and anyone else looking to use AI and automation to scale their brand. We have a classroom with complete AI automation systems just like this one, as well as full courses on different AI tools. And if you ever get stuck, you get direct access to me for tech support. So we just launched a week ago. We almost have 100 members in here. So if you're interested, make sure to check out the link below the video. All right, so the first thing that we need to do is create our automation. Again, the idea is this is going to run every single day, potentially multiple times per day. But before we can turn on the automation, we actually need to create the types of slideshows that we want to put out on TikTok. So our first page inside of Airtable is this create automation page. And I'll kind of walk you through this step by step. And in this example, what I'm going to try to do is recreate the aesthetic of this type of slideshow to see if we can kind of recreate it. All right. So it'll make more sense when we get through all of these fields. And then once our automation is created, we'll have the ability to kind of preview it and take a look at what the prompts look like, what some of the images look like. And once we're happy with the settings of our automation, we can flip it on or turn it to active. And then at that point, it will start running automatically based on your schedule and posting it to TikTok. All right, so let's get going. And again, we're going to try to recreate the aesthetic of this TikTok page here. So the first thing we want to do is just give our automation a name. This is more for internal purposes. So for this, maybe we're going to do corporate hacks, and that's kind of what this page is all about. The next thing we want to do is give this a niche. Okay, so what is the actual niche of the TikTok page that we're trying to do? So I'm going to do corporate career tips for young professionals, and this will be fed into the AI when it's generating ideas for the slides. All right, the next field is really important. You probably want to spend some time on this because this is going to decide the type of content that the AI is going to be putting out every single day. So let me just give you an example of what I would do for this page. And we'll spend a little time here again, because the AI is going to be using this as really the main input when it decides the topics and what's actually going on the slide. So I'm going to say create slideshows about corporate career hacks, workplace habits, and professional tips that make you look more put together, organized, or senior than you actually are. Topics include productivity habits, communication tricks, organization systems, things that make coworkers respect you more, habits that made a difference in your career. Hook style. So you want to include examples of the type of hooks that you want, right? Corporate hacks that made my coworkers think I'm way more put together than I actually am. Corporate habits that help me stand out without saying much. Things I wish someone told me sooner because they could have saved me years. And then I'm going to give the target audience, okay? Women in their 20s and 30s navigating corporate jobs. So take some time to fill this out. Give it examples. If you have specific examples of the types of posts and the titles of posts that you want it to create, fill it in here because, again, this will be fed into our AI. All right, the next field is almost equally important, and that's the format of the content. So how to write the content, which should be the tone, the style, the slide structure, okay? So for this example, I'm gonna say a casual, relatable tone like you're sharing secrets with a friend, lowercase text, hook is 1 to 2 short, punchy sentences. Each slide has a numbered title. Number 1, block your calendar. And 2 to 3 sentences explaining the tip. Include specific, actionable advice. Tone is confident but not preachy, like this changed everything for me. Generate 5 to 8 slides per slideshow. So this is where you can give it a little guidance on how long your slideshows want to be and what is the overall tone and style, because this is going to be fed again into our AI agent, which is going to prompt Nano Banana, which is how these slides are getting generated. All right, next you want to give it the image style. And don't worry, we'll be able to upload reference images later on if you want, but here you want to describe the overall aesthetic of the types of images, right? If we go through this page over here and look at the types of images, right? It's a computer at a desk. This is inside of an office, in an office, at a desk, at a computer, at a laptop. So the aesthetic and the types of images here are clearly corporate office style images. And so I'm saying professional office aesthetic, warm natural lighting, soft muted tones. Scenes include laptops, someone writing notes, coffee cup next to a MacBook, laptop with a calendar open, right? So give examples of the types of scenes that you want to see in your images. Now, the next field is optional. And what this is a cover reference image. So for some of these slideshow accounts, and actually both of our examples, they have a very consistent cover image. So in this example, it's this AI character, Kayla, right? So it's an image of her holding up a glass of wine in slightly different settings, in slightly different images, but it's a consistent cover image. And when we go back to this cat money budget, it's the same idea. We've got this character or this avatar who's taking a photo of herself looking in her mirror, and she's inside her apartment dressed in jeans with kind of the skyline in the background. Now, not every slideshow account is like this, but these two are. And so what this field gives you the option is to upload a cover reference image that the AI will try to use as a reference image in every single cover. So what I did over here is I grabbed the corporate Kayla account cover image and I downloaded it to my computer. So what I can do is upload that image as the reference image for the cover and then upload that right into Airtable. And now Nano Banana will use her as the reference image when creating our cover images. All right, so this next field is the same idea here, right? So this is for reference images throughout the slideshow. So again, if you want to include specific examples of the types of slides that you want to see in your automation, you can upload them here. So for example, these two images here are from the Kayla account. So I'm going to upload these two as an example, but you should upload, I would say, at least 5 to 7 images to give the AI a good idea of the types of kind of aesthetic you want to see in your slideshow images. So back into Airtable, I'm going to upload those two. So again, what's going to happen in our automation is we're going to feed these two images as reference images to Nano Banana when it's making the images for the specific slide. So between the image style prompt that I'm giving it right here and these two reference images, hopefully it will do a good job of creating images for our slides around this office aesthetic. All right, so we do have scheduling built into this automation, which is pretty cool. So we're using Blotato here. So what you can do here is choose which days you want to post, right? So if you want to post every single day, you can choose the days in this option over here. So let me just for this choose every single day. And then we have a couple of time options that I built in here. So I kind of did every 3 hours here. So let's say we want to post at 12 and 3 o'clock every single day. This allows you to control your calendar here. All right, so we have all of the fields in for our automation. So what's gonna happen when I click create is we're gonna be able to kind of review the outputs here before we turn this on, right? So if I hit create, it's not gonna just schedule it automatically. We have a chance to review a couple of different steps. So let me show you that in the next step. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on create. And now in the next page, this is where you can review your automation. So this first one is, again, is that personal finance one I was trying to replicate. And here is the new one that I created here, which is the corporate hacks. And on this page, what you can do is you can change your narrative prompt, your format prompt, and your image style. If you ever want to tweak your prompts, you can also set your schedule here and turn the automation on, which I'll talk about in a second. But it's on the next page where we can first review the text of the slideshows. So if I go into slideshows, what I can see in my pending column is the one that I just created. So what this is basically a preview of what you can expect once you turn this automation on in terms of the text at this point. So when I click into this and go down to slides, I can kind of preview the text of the slides here. And I can also edit this if I want as well. So I can see for this very first slideshow, the title that it's giving me is Corporate Habits That Made My Coworkers Think I'm Way More Senior Than I Actually Am. And then again, I'm able to preview the title for this first slide, which is show up to meetings with a notebook. And then here's the body text right here. And I can preview, we can see it made 8 slides for this. And what I'm previewing here, again, is the title and the body text. Now, the purpose of this is not necessarily for this one slideshow, but really the overall automation. In other words, does the titles and the body text make sense to the types of content that you're trying to create? So, for example, let's say the body text, maybe I think these are just a little bit too long, right? Because this text is going to be auto-generated by Nano Banana over an image. And to me, this is a little bit too much text. So that's the purpose of this step. You want to review kind of the output. So I could go back to my automations and edit this, right? So in the format prompt, I could come here and edit this, right? It says 2 to 3 sentences. I could say, and 2 sentences max explaining the tip, right? So I can make an edit there, and I could go back and click on run now. And what this should do is recreate that slideshow that I can review it as a new draft. And you can see that a new slideshow has now come in. So this second one is based on the edits that I made. So again, if I come back in here and open up these slides, we can see that one is 2 sentences. This one is 2 sentences. This one is 2 sentences, right? So it's obeying the prompt there, okay? So that is the purpose of that step, is you want to review the text output, right? And again, if you're not happy, you can come back into the prompt, and for both the narrative prompt and the format prompt, you can make edits. Once you've made your edits, click on run now. Go back into slideshows, and it's going to generate another one that says pending review. Now, once you're happy with the text, it's time to start rendering the images. So I'm going to come into this one, the second one that's pending review. And also, by the way, on older ones that you reviewed that you did not like, I just added the ability. You can come in here and you can click on this delete record, and it will delete it from your pending review just like that. But let's look at this one now that we're happy with the text output. Now we want to see what the images will look like based on these 8 slides. So what I can do in the status is come into pending review and change that to approved. Now, once I click on approve, what that's going to do is send that over to Nano Banana, and you can see it's rendering right now. Those images will come out in the output gallery when it's done. So again, what we're doing is we're sending this all as a prompt to Nano Banana to create all of these slides with the cover image and the cover title, every single slide, every image, all of the text, all with Nano Banana. All right, so we can see that Nano Banana finished up in the background, and now our slideshow has changed to ready. So what this means is that we can review these images now by clicking into the card like this. So here we've got corporate hacks that made my coworkers think I'm way more senior than I actually am. Now, in this record in Airtable, number one, what we can see is the cover image. And you can see it did a beautiful job of bringing in our reference image. So again, here is the reference image we gave Nano Banana based off of this account. And look at our first slide, our cover slide. Perfect job right there. It did a really good job with the text. Corporate hacks that made my coworkers think I'm way more senior than I actually am. So that's the preview of the cover slide. And then again, within this Airtable record, you can see we have our slides here one by one. So we can open up each of these. We can review the title text, the body text, and the actual slide. So we can open this one up. So here's slide number 1, block your calendar strategically. And it did, again, a really good job with the text. And in terms of the images, it's using kind of the office aesthetic here. For this one, it put 3 images on the slide. And we can go through each of these slides if we want, just to review what the aesthetic looks like. So number 2 is the 24-hour email rule. Draft emotional emails, but wait 24 hours before sending. You'll sound so much more composed. And senior leaders literally never send reactive messages. Again, this time we've got 6 images in the slideshow. So I'm not sure if that's in my prompt or not, but it's something we can review. And then here is the third slide. And again, something's going on with the grid images, but here is where you can review all of the slides. Again, what we're looking for is the overall visual aesthetic. Does it match what you're trying to accomplish? And if not, again, what you can do is go back to the automation tab, and this is where you can edit your image style. So again, I can come back into automations, and now for my image style, what I'm gonna try to add here as part of my prompt is single image only, no collages, no grids, no split frames. So again, right now, we have not turned our automation on. We're at the stage where we're still reviewing it and kind of perfecting the look and feel before we turn it to active. Now, with that new image prompt, I can go back to my slideshow here. And so if I want to regenerate those images, again, from the interface view, I'm going to click back into the record. And for status, I'm just going to change it from ready to approved. And what that should do is re-trigger the n8n automation to regenerate those images. And you can see the status has already changed to rendering. So hopefully we'll come back and we'll have some new images to check out. All right, so we can see that has regenerated. The status is back at ready. And now if we go into these slides, what we can see, hopefully, is we have single images, no more grid images, right? So we still have the same title and we still have the same text, but now we've regenerated the image based on the updated prompt that we made to the automation. So you can see how you're able to change all of this directly through Airtable. Now, once you're happy with your setup here in terms of the types of images that are coming through and the types of slides in terms of the text that's being generated, it's time to activate the actual automation, right? And so what that will do is turn on the automation and it will start generating these slideshows and publishing them to TikTok automatically. So the way that we do that is we go back to the automation tab, and you can see we have a status column here. And when I do this drop down and I turn this to active, it will activate your automation. So I'm going to check that on to active. And what this is going to do, again, is schedule this out to publish to TikTok with music. So I think this is a good time to hop into n8n and just do an overview of the actual automation inside of there. All right, so let's hop into n8n and look at what's going on behind the scenes. And I have pulled up one of the runs here that actually published to TikTok. I think it was last night. So let's talk about the top half of this automation, which is the schedule trigger. And what this is doing is it's eventually generating the text for the slides. So it's starting with a schedule trigger. So what this is doing is it's checking every hour. This is running every hour. And what it's going to do is check Airtable to see what automations are active. Okay, so again, remember, inside of Airtable, right now, I have 2 automations that are set to active. Now, if you're not ready to publish these, of course, you could set this to draft or even paused, and it will skip those over. It won't pull them in. But last night when this ran, I had this personal finance niche automation set to active. And so that's what this Airtable is doing, right? So again, on the schedule, this is going to trigger every hour, and then Airtable is going to look, okay, which automations are active. And you can see it pulled in the personal finance one here. All right, now the next node is a code node here, and we're filtering by the schedule. Now remember, just because an automation is active doesn't mean we need to publish it every hour, right? Because we have these post times. We only want to publish at 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock, not every single hour. So what this code node is doing is it's basically checking the current day and time against each automation's posting schedule. And it's filtering out any automations that do not match the current time. Now, in this example, it did match the current time, which was, I think, 9 o'clock. And so you can see it pushed this automation through. Now, on the bottom part right here, this webhook node, this is kind of the manual process where you can generate the slides manually. Now, you'll remember earlier on in the video, when I was reviewing the slideshows, I was reviewing the text and I wanted to make the text shorter, right? So I came in here and I changed the narrative prompt, and then I clicked that Run Now button. Remember when I did that? So what that Run Now button does is it generates this webhook down here, and then that gets the manual automations. In other words, the records where this button was just checked. And so that's the manual way that you can fire off this automation. And so I have a merge node here that's just combining the automations that are on a schedule with any automations that you're running manually. All right, next we have a code node. And as you can see, this is building the prompt for Claude, which we're going to use in the next node. And so this creates the Claude prompt based on, you can see the niche that you enter, the narrative prompt that you enter, and the format prompt. And so you can see that's going into the user prompt over here. The niche, the narrative, and the format prompts are helping to generate the user prompt for Claude. And then it's also building the system prompt, which you can see over here. So casual, lowercase text style. So again, we're pulling that in from the format prompt. So this code node is taking that information from Airtable, and it's going to build out the system and the user prompt, which we're then going to feed into a Claude node in the next node here. So if I open up this Claude node, for the user prompt, you can see we're just pulling in from the code node here, and then same idea for the system prompt here, we're pulling it from the code node as well. So that code node is really doing the heavy lifting in terms of writing our prompt. Then we're just passing those variables into the Claude node here. Then after the Claude node, we have another code node, which is basically just going to parse the response. It's going to handle those markdown code blocks, and it's going to return structured data like the hook and then the slides. And then for each slide, we've got the title and the body. So you can see how nicely this is formatted from the code node. Then after that, we just have an if node, which is checking for an error. And if there's an error, we'll write it to Airtable. If no error, we're going to go to Airtable and create that slideshow. So if I go back into Airtable, we can see this is the actual slideshow here. The money lessons I wish someone told me at 25. And then if I go into the actual Airtable database here in the slideshow table, it's this column, this third one right here. So it's filling in all of this information inside of Airtable. Now we've got another code node, and these are all written by ChatGPT and Claude, by the way. So it's going to loop through the slides array from the previous AI response, and it's going to output the individual items like the slide number, the title text, and the body text. So you can see we've got 7 items here, which are the 7 slides that are going to be generated. Then we've got another Airtable node. So what we're doing is passing in the data from the code node into Airtable. So we've got the slide number, the slideshow, the title text, and the body text. And so we now have got all 7 slides inside of Airtable. Then we've got another Airtable node here, which is updating the last run. So this is sending a timestamp inside of Airtable. We have a last run field here. And so what this does is it prevents double posting within the same hour. And then we have an if path. And so what this is checking for is if our status is set to active here. And if the automation is set to active, it's going to go to this Airtable node, which is going to update the status as approved. And if it's approved, it's going to continue on through the rest of the automation, which is actually going to create those images and post them to TikTok. Now, when you come into your slideshow and you have changed this to approved, or when it's approved through the top of the n8n workflow over here, it triggers the bottom half of our automation. And so this webhook is looking for the status of Airtable when it's approved. And when that kicks off, we have an Airtable node that's just going to pull in the record ID of that specific slideshow. And then you remember when I was doing this manually, the next node here is we're just changing the status to rendering. So again, during this manual process, you know that it's rendering. So that's what this step is here. Now, each slideshow record has a collection of slides, right? So each one of these are slideshows. And then when we go down here, you can see we have these linked records. So these are the slides that are attached to each slideshow. Now, to pull that out in Airtable, what we have here is a code node that's going to help build that filter. So this code node is creating a filter that we're going to use in this next Airtable record to get the slides. So you can see we're filtering by a formula here that was created by the code node. So you'll see all the way at the bottom, we're using this filter. So now we're able to pull in that linked record, which has the actual 7 slides. And now that we have those slides, we're going to use a code node. We're going to use another code node, and this is going to build one job per image to send to FAL AI. So we've got 8 items here. We've got 7 for the slides and 1 for the cover image. And now we're sending that to FAL AI with an HTTP request. So in FAL AI, we're using Nano Banana Pro. And you can see we've got our URL up here. We've got our JSON body down here, again, coming from the code node. And you can see on the output side with these URLs, these are the actual images of the slides that FAL AI is generating. So if I open one of these up in a new tab, you can see this is the slide for one of the slideshows fully generated with Nano Banana Pro inside of FAL AI. So that's what this node is doing over here. Now the next node is an if node, and it's checking if the image is a hook image or not, because in Airtable, we have a specific field for the hook image, which you can see on the true branch, we have this one item. So this is the hook image here. And again, if I open this up, we can see this is the hook image or the cover image. I'm 28, and these are the money mistakes I finally stopped making. And then on the false branch, these are just all of the slides, right? The non-hook slides. And so for both of those paths, we're just updating the images into Airtable. We're merging those as done. Then we've got another Airtable node, which is just updating the status to ready. We have an if node to check that the status is set to active. And then what this code node is doing is it's collecting all of the image URLs for the slideshow. You can see over here, because we need to pass this in to Blotato in the next step to publish to TikTok. So here is our Blotato node. And again, Blotato is a service that allows you to publish automatically to different social networks. And so you can see the way that we have this configured here. And again, this is coming from the code node here for our text. This is the caption, which is pulling from this field. And then we have our media URLs, which are all of these images over here. You can see the expression that we're using. We're joining all of the URLs so that Blotato publishes these images one by one as a slideshow. Then you can see the title field is coming from this title over here. And then for a couple of settings down here, I do have is AI generated. And then importantly, this is a really nice setting inside of Blotato, is that we have music automatically added to here, because you'll notice on most slideshows, they are published with music. And so what this does is automatically put music on your slideshows. So if we come into one of these slideshows that published on my account, and let me just play this. So you can see Blotato is automatically applying some music. Honestly, I'm not sure how they decide which music to put on there, but I do think it's a nice touch. And then finally, we're going back to Airtable to update the status as published. So you can see in my Airtable in the slideshow page, these have all been published. And you can also view them in the output gallery one by one. And you can see these are tagged as published as well. So I know that was a bit of a longer video. I know it seemed pretty involved. Again, if you want access to that complete workflow, the n8n template, the Airtable base, and direct support from me, make sure to check out my premium community, Scale AI. So this is AI and automation for TikTok shops, for e-commerce brands and creative agencies who are learning how to implement and use AI in their business.